Overtones, they're an incredible tool to add power and beauty to your tone, but it can be overwhelming and hard to get started, so I brought a friend along to help. It's gonna get weird. Hi, and welcome to the Saxophone Academy. I'm Dr. Wally Wallace, and if you're interested in saxophone masterclasses, please do subscribe and be sure to hit the like button to turn your overtones into ubertones. Now today we're talking about overtones, the what, when, how, and why to practice them, and give some context-related exercises as well. And all the exercises we're talking about today, you can find in the link below in our free fundamentals course. Download the workbook. Everything we're talking about today will be in there. And related to that, many of you have reached out and asked me, I'm very humbled, to buy me a cup of coffee, and you meant literally. So I did add a link to buy me a cup of coffee and help support the Saxophone Academy and keep as much teaching content as free as possible. I'm really grateful, and it means a lot to me. Thank you. Now today, we're going to be talking about overtones, how to get started, and how to make them better. Now the first question many of you are asking is, what are overtones? Well, anytime you play a note, you hear not only that perceived pitch, but many notes above it that you don't specifically individually hear. It's like the fairy world. It's all around us, you just can't see it. But I'm gonna find it. They're always there, and the strength and number of the overtones above that perceived pitch, and what we call that first pitch that we hear is called the fundamental. So if we play a B flat, we hear B flat, and we call that the fundamental, but there are still overtones above it. And the strength and number of overtones is what gives the saxophone its unique sound. The number of overtones and the strength of those overtones is what we call the timbre of the sound, and what makes the saxophone sound like a saxophone. So even if I play a B flat on the saxophone and a B flat on the clarinet, the saxophone sounds like a saxophone and the clarinet sounds like a torture stick because the saxophone has a different overtone scheme than the torture stick. They're always there, but we're generally perceiving the fundamental, or the name of the note we're playing. Now to dive in and talk about the math and acoustics involved, Google it, because I'm only here to make your playing better. I don't want to talk about that stuff. So to play overtones, we bypass that fundamental pitch and isolate one of the higher harmonics or overtones. Think about a bugle. A bugle doesn't have any keys or valves, but a bugle player can go up and down the overtone series playing bugle calls and tunes. And you can actually do this on the saxophone just by fingering low B flat. And if you do that every day, you'll need a good divorce attorney. Trust me. So why do we practice overtones? Why are saxophonists always going on and on about overtones? And why do I have so many overtone exercises in the free workbook? Well, in a word, voicing. In 3 words, to master voicing, or how we shape our oral cavity. That has a huge impact on the tone and altissimo on the saxophone. So by finding the ideal voicing for different ranges of the saxophone, we can really make the instrument sing and come alive. It gives more power and clarity to the notes if we find the right voicing that unlocks like a cheat code for making the saxophone really come alive. And whenever I'm testing a new saxophone or reviewing a saxophone, I spend a good amount of time playing overtones, finding the voicing that really makes that instrument sing. It's almost like magic or a little bit of voodoo. Hoodoo? You do what? Remind me of the Babe. I miss Bowie. But seriously, it's a little bit of magic. We're not sure how it works. We just knows it works. Now, what about altissimo? Are we just learning overtones to play into the altissimo register? No, overtones teach us voicing, which can be used in altissimo, but generally I don't teach altissimo by doing overtones. I find playing B flat 4, or altissimo B flat, as an overtone of low B flat feels incredibly different than just playing with a good altissimo fingering, G key with octave key for instrument. The voicing is very different. Now, overtones teach us how to shape our oral cavity, but I don't like it for altissimo specifically. It doesn't hurt, but I don't find it the most effective tool. They do, however, become an incredibly powerful tool in the natural range of the instrument, finding the sweet spots, really making your horn sing. They're an incredibly powerful tone exercise. So how do we get started if you're an absolute beginner? How do we make our first overtone? We're going to cheat. We're going to slur to the overtone. So just to start, and I've covered this in a previous beginner video, I'll put a link down below, we're just going to play middle B flat and slur to low B flat while still holding middle B flat. And if you can keep the pitch of B flat 2 while fingering low B flat, voila, congratulations, you've played your first overtone. But chances are you've done it without ever actually meaning to. And check out the beginning overtone video if you're just getting started. But today we're talking about a little bit more advanced concept, doing vertical leaps with overtones. And that's going to involve some bigger changes to the entire chain of sound production. Our embouchure, our tongue position, our oral cavity, our soft palate, and even the vocal tract and throat. Now, I really don't want you thinking about all this stuff because if we create tension in the wrong place, it's going to cause a lot of problems. So the way I teach it is primarily through voicing or shaping vowel sounds with our tongue. I find most people are really good at making vowel shapes with their tongue because it's part of speaking. Engaging specific muscles in the throat, not so much. It's why when you go to the doctor, they tell you to say, ah, not dilate your vocal tract. It's something we can do fairly naturally and gets the desired result. So when you do shape those vowels, you will notice your embouchure changes. Your throat will change. I just don't want you to focus on that. I want you to focus on the vowel shape with your tongue and let the other stuff move as minimally as possible. So we're going to go up the overtone series and experiment with some of these voices. So sing along with Ollie and notice how when you shape these sounds, how the different parts of your mouth and throat change. Now, given that everyone's physiology is different, what works for me and some of my students may not work for you, and certainly not for all of my students. You're going to have to experiment with the shape of your oral cavity, trying different sounds and syllables. Some people find it helpful to add an R syllable at the end, to add a little more curvature to the tongue, and other things will change when we do that as well. You're going to have to experiment. Don't get frustrated. Do a little bit every day. So how do we apply overtones to make our tone better? Through tone matching. So whatever tone or note on the saxophone we want to make better, we simply play the note normally, then play it as an overtone, and try to remember the shaping of the oral cavity that produced the overtone. Then we apply that overtone to the regularly fingered note, and voila, you're going to notice a lot more power and resonance in your saxophone tone. So let's take part of this month's assignment from the free workbook, Melodic Study number 3. So I like to isolate individual notes, even a smaller part of the phrase, and then match the notes to the overtone. So for instance, if I wanted to take the high end of that phrase and add a little bit more clarity to the tone, I would play the note, slur it to an overtone, and back to the normal note, keeping the sensation of playing an overtone. Then put it in context, play the small portion of the phrase as an overtone, normally fingered, overtone, normally fingered, and go back and forth, learning how the shape of your oral cavity really makes the upper end of the horn sing. Now you can apply this technique to any music you're playing, from Gershwin to Glazunov. It doesn't matter. Simply pick out the notes you want to improve the tone quality of, play them as overtones, and then match going back and forth. I've got a specific exercise this month in our fundamentals course, number 6 on page 17, to go up the arpeggio to work on those vertical leaps, and then it slurs back down. Now, you will have questions. Make sure you let me know your questions in the comments below. And write to your local TV station and let them know that you want Ollie the Overtones Sing-Along Hour on your local TV station. I will be back next week with a video on transcription. I'm very excited about a very powerful tool for your jazz playing. And until then, go practice.